Hey guys, how's it going? I am here today to talk about The History of Alexander by Quintus Curtius Rufus. So this book was published in the somewhere I think around the first century AD. This is a Penguin classic and it has a good intro, and the intro kind of talks about speculating about when it could have been published. No one's quite sure, but it seemed like the author came to the conclusion that it was around the middle of the first century AD. And this is the only surviving work of Quintus Curtius Rufus that we have. And even it is incomplete. The author, translator, had to give kind of a summary of the first two books which were lost. And there are parts where he adds an end note, and he's kind of like, yeah, here the text breaks off, and we have some area where there was a paragraph that's just kind of somehow didn't make it. I don't know. I don't quite know how, whether it's like faded on the page or something. But anyway, so we also don't know much certain about Quintus Curtius Rufus himself. He may have been a consul in the Roman Empire. He may have been a governor in North Africa, it sounds like. But anyway, so obviously this book is what it says it is. It's a history of mainly the campaigns of Alexander. It doesn't talk much about his early life in Macedonia. It doesn't talk much about his parents. It doesn't talk about his childhood, certainly. It starts when he becomes king at 20. When he's 20 years old, he becomes king and begins his campaign against Darius, the king of Persia, ostensibly to get revenge for the assassination of Alexander's father, Philip II, who was killed, who I know was killed based on another documentary I watched about Alexander, was killed by I believe a former lover of his, whom he'd spurned, I think. But anyway, Alexander may have believed that his father was really assassinated by Darius, or he may have used that as propaganda. I think that I haven't read enough about Alexander to know how certain we are nowadays of that. But anyway, so this book goes from there and goes through pretty much all of Alexander's campaigns, all the way until he dies, and also goes through the immediate aftermath of his death and kind of the division of his empire between his generals. And so his campaigns take him, through Persia, down to Egypt, into Central Asia, and even up. The geography is sometimes uncertain, but up kind of through kind of over Central Asia to where Asia meets Europe. So it was cool. The battles, there are some really cool battles described in this book. Like, for example, the Battle of Tyre. So Tyre was this city off the coast of modern-day Israel on a small island. And so Alexander, to take it, he had to have his army, build a bridge to it. And they had to, fight as they were building this bridge to Tyre. And that was cool. There was this incident where Alexander came to this city somewhere in Central Asia, which was kind of on this kind of mountainside, and the king kind of made fun of him. He was like, "You can't take this place. We're in too high a position. You would have to fly up to the area behind us in order to do it. So you Macedonians would need wings." And so Alexander says, "Well, I'll show you that the Macedonians do have wings." And so he had a bunch of soldiers climb the cliff up to the area behind this city overnight, and then in the morning he was like, "Hey, look, we do fly." And then the ruler of that city was intimidated enough that he just surrendered. So there are just cool stories like that, and cool descriptions of battles. I always kind of find descriptions of battles kind of confusing, and that was still true here, but I still found it a lot of fun. But obviously, you don't go to a book like this for kind of an accurate history. You go to it for the entertainment value, but also you go to it as what Steve Donahue said. He was referring to Livy, the histories of Livy, but he said that it's kind of a psychological study in how the Romans wanted to think of themselves. But for this is obviously a study of how the Romans wanted to think of Alexander the Great. And so the most interesting part for me was Curtius's analysis of Alexander's character. And you can definitely see that he had an idea of Alexander that he really wanted to promote. He kind of makes it clear. He kind of tells you that he thinks that Alexander was innately kind of a great person, intelligent, persistent, charismatic, but that what mainly corrupted him in his mind was his good luck, basically. He kept having so much good luck in his campaigns and kept having so many successes, which basically just fed into his egomania. And that combined with Alexander's adoption of Persian customs is what Curtius thinks led to kind of his corruption and downfall. But that idea isn't really necessarily even supported by the evidence that Curtius gives, because we definitely see that Alexander is prone to kind of drunken fits of violent rage, which in his case with someone with as much power as he had, can lead to the sacking and or burning down of cities and or killing of one of his best friends. So he wasn't, and you have to think Alexander, for anyone who doesn't know, believed that he was the son of Zeus, and oh boy, there's a cat being naughty. You have to think that someone who thought that of himself and insisted that the people around him believe it and that they treat him as such, you have to think that he was just, and that he could take over the world. You have to think that a guy like that was kind of a huge egomaniac. And even though, you definitely, his good luck and good fortune would feed into that, make him think that he kind of had divine favor, it was before he started winning his military victories that Alexander believed that he was the son of Zeus. It didn't take his military victories to convince him. He believed it beforehand and kind of searched for all the evidence he could of it. So, yeah, I don't agree with Curtius's assessment, certainly. And but yeah, that was the most interesting part, was kind of just this analysis of Alexander's character. And he is kind of a man of contradictions, I guess. I mean, he was, as much as I've talked about him being an egomaniac, kings who submitted to him, who surrendered to him, even if they'd been fighting for a while, he would be very generous to them. He would give them back their kingdom, let them rule under his rule, basically. They would continue to rule over their kingdom, and they would just answer to him. He at one point takes King Darius of Persia's wife and daughters and mother and young son captive, and he decides that they are going to be treated as though they were still royalty. And he also makes a great effort to always endure the hardships of his campaigns alongside his soldiers. He often wouldn't take food or drink unless the soldiers were fed and had water to drink. He would travel on foot with them. So, but at the same time, like I said, he was prone to violent anger. He drank a lot, which could lead to his violent fits of anger. He was an egomaniac, and as the book goes on, you can see him more and more insisting that the people around him treat him like the son of Zeus, and also believe, as he believes, that he's the son of Zeus. So, he's a complex character. He's interesting. It would be interesting to read a historical novel about him. I don't know if any have been written, but I would be interested to find one. If anyone watching this knows of one, I would definitely be open to reading it. And one last point I want to make is, like I said, Quintus Curtius Rufus believed that part of Alexander's corruption was his adoption of Persian customs. and that is indicative of Curtius's own bias. I mean, he definitely doesn't make it any kind of he doesn't conceal his racism. He he thinks of not just Persians but people of Central Asia, Indians, people from what we would know today as Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkmenistan. He thinks of them as violent, licentious, even stupid. It seems to me. So that is something that runs through the whole narrative, and it's not stellar, but it was also just common among Romans at the time. But if you can get past that, there's a lot more. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. So yeah, I did enjoy this. I would recommend it if you're interested in Alexander the Great. But again, don't come to it expecting to find a comprehensive or fully accurate history. There are other further readings in here to other historians who have written about Alexander, and both ancient historians and more modern historians. And I'm really, really eager to read. Plutarch wrote a biography, Diodorus, Justin, Arrian are ancient historians who wrote histories about Alexander, and I think it would be really cool to read all of those histories and then read some modern histories or biographies of Alexander, and just see how different people have thought of him and have analyzed his reign and his campaigns. So yeah, I think this was interesting. It might not be for everyone, obviously, if you're not interested in history, if you're not particularly interested in Alexander the Great, but there is a lot of entertainment value here, and it's just an interesting character study. So as long as you don't take this all as holy writ in terms of history, I definitely think this is worth reading. So yeah, thank you guys. That's all I have today. So bye.